How do you keep track of all the things in recurring tasks or upcoming tasks, things you're not working on right now, but you need to remember for the future? And how do you keep track of what you need to do after somebody else does what they need to do? When you're waiting around for them to finish, how do you keep and not lose and not forget the things that you're going to do after their part is done? So I use digital project management software to do this. So today we're going to talk about how to use software, apps, technology to make this a little easier and how to pick one that is going to work for you. Welcome to Explore Your Enthusiasm, episode 288 with me, Tara Sweiger. This week I'm answering the question that occurs anytime after you make a map. How the heck do I keep track of all of the moving parts? You see, in my book, Map Your Business, and in my Starship Program, you begin by getting clear on your big vision. And then you set a goal and you break it down into doable action steps. But after you have that in a big list of doable action steps, how do you keep track of it all? How do you keep it in order of what you need to do and kind of not stress about the stuff that you're not ready to do yet that's later on in the map? How do you make sure that you remember to do the stuff that you plan to do later? This is where a lot of us get stuck. So for the month of December, that's what we're going to talk about. What you do after you make your map at the beginning of the year to figure out how to actually stay on top of the things and actually get them done in 2020. Last week, we started by talking about how to keep track of what you actually have to do this week, like this coming week and this month. And I talked about how I use paper planners. Today, we're going to talk about task management software so you can keep track of what you're going to do in coming weeks without stressing about it this week, and how to keep track of recurring tasks that you do every single week. So next week, we're going to talk about how to pick your next big project that you might set your goal around. And we're going to kick off the new year on January 1st with an episode about how to create your best year yet. So I started tracking my to-do list for my business digitally when I got my first VA or virtual assistant. So she is somebody who helped me out with a lot of the admin tasks virtually, and that we didn't work together in the same office. She did it online. So I needed to communicate every single step of a project easily and quickly without it turning into a long conversation about every single thing every single time. I also needed to make sure that we did not miss a single step of any of the things that she was taking over for me. Because when you've been working by yourself in business for a lot of times, you've got it all in your head. You've got a little checklist in your head that you go down, but actually getting it down on paper can be hard. And communicating it to someone else so they don't miss a single step can be hard. But what I learned right away is that having it down out of my head in a checklist made it not only easier for my VA not to skip a step, but it made it easier for me not to skip a step. I got every single task done faster once I had a checklist for it. There's actually a book all about this called The Checklist Manifesto. You should check it out if you're interested in learning more about checklists. Basically, the author talks about knowing exactly what to do next saves you time, and it saves you energy thinking about what you're going to do next, and it saves you mistakes. You're not going to forget steps when you've got it all down in front of you, especially when you put it in really, really clear detail. So we started out, me and my VA, back in 2013, 2012, we started out using Evernote for checklists, but really soon we moved to Asana. So Evernote is really great at keeping everything like together in a folder. You can have checklists, you can do documents, you can put a lot of it there, but it didn't really make any reminders or prompt us to do the next step. It wasn't like the checklist then led us to the next item on the checklist. You basically had to have the checklist open and you had to remember to open it and you had to remember to go to find that specific checklist. So if you have got anyone else in your business, even if they're just super part-time, my VA started out 1 hour a week and I think now I'm at maybe 2 or 3 hours a week. You definitely need some way to communicate tasks and deadlines and checklists without it all being a conversation. Yes, you're going to have to train them on each step of the task and checklist, but by having that checklist made, the training process is going to be so much simpler. So it's going to give you peace of mind because you can actually see when they've done each step if you have them check it off. And it's also going to save you time by not having to talk to them about, like, have you done that? You can see that they've done it in the system where you're tracking it. If you don't have anyone else in your team, you can still use project management software to help you stay on top of things. I actually use it a lot for things just I'm doing so that I have a checklist to mark off. Now you might be asking, do you need digital planning tools? Tara, do I need digital planning tools in my one-woman handmade business? Can I just keep Post-its everywhere? You absolutely can. Here's how to decide. Number one, know your projects. So I have Starship captains who are going through this process. Start by listing all of their projects. You're going to list one-time things you just need to do once that are upcoming, like you want to make a change to the about page of your website. You want to list that item. You want to contact that wholesale customer. I also have them list recurring projects, things you do every single week, like you probably post on Instagram every week. You send an email. You might do a podcast. And then that includes the steps to your social media posts. Do you make an image? Do you write it up ahead of time? Do you schedule it? Do you include a link? Do you need to go looking for stuff? Anything you do or plan to do in a month, you need on one big list to really see it all in front of you. This is going to help you in a lot of ways, but definitely do it. Then you can split it down into repeating tasks and one-time tasks. Then I want you to look at how many things you have to hand back and forth to someone else. So for example, if you're a knitwear designer, you design the pattern and then you might send it to a tech editor and then it comes back to you and you take photos and then you do a call for test knitters and then you've got the test knitters and then you do your launch. But it requires you to wait on other people and communicate back and forth with other people before you can finish the project yourself. You can't go on to the next step until you get it back from the tech editor. Knowing what tasks you have where you're waiting on someone else will help you figure out what you need to put online. Now the second question is to ask yourself, how do you keep track of repeating tasks now? Is it working for you? Because maybe you have a paper system that's working great. So my first marketing plan was a Post-it note that I kept stuck to my computer. It was a list of what I did each day. All I did was look at it each day and do those steps. That was fantastic. That's definitely a great place to start. You don't need to use a task management software, just use a Post-it note. But maybe you're forgetting half of every single task that you do. Like you plan to put something on Instagram and you realize at the last minute you don't have what you need. Or you have to look up hashtags. You don't have it all together in one place. Or maybe it's taking you twice as long to finish it because you get interrupted because it's not all together, because you're not remembering. In which case a checklist for you to go down would be super helpful and help you make decisions and do tasks so much faster. So you could do this checklist manually or digitally. You could keep it in your paper planner that you have a checklist that you go down and each week do a sticker on it, or each week do a different colored check mark next to it, or print out a checklist every single week that you mark off, or put it in a software. Anything you're more likely to see. If it's an app that sets up reminders on your phone, or if it's just a piece of paper in your planner that you check every morning, something that's going to ease it all for you. Question number three to ask yourself about what system you need is, how do you keep track of next steps for one-time projects? When you've got your big list of stuff to work on, how do you keep track of that stuff at the bottom of the list that you're not to yet? And is that working for you? Would you prefer to be reminded of deadlines and next steps, to have a reminder go off on your phone or your computer or when you sit down? Or is it working for you to just have a paper list and look at it and check it off? Some people find a big list of tasks they're going to do over the next 3 months really overwhelming and they can't focus on what's right in front of them, so they need to write it in smaller lists, keep the bigger list away from them. Some people feel great about having it all in front of them. It's really up to you and how you work. If you're thinking you have the kind of business that might not use task management software, let me share with you how some Starship captains use it right now. So I have a Starship captain who uses it to keep track of production. So that includes wholesale orders. She does a task inside the software, which we'll talk more about in a minute. She does a task inside the software that has like a retail shop's name, and then everything she's sending them broken up by base and then color in her task management software. So she looks at it, she knows she has to dye it all and then just label it all, then she has to ship it all. She can mark it all off when it's all done and shipped. It's just the way she keeps track of it. Other captains use it for show prep. What are all the things you have to gather to put in the car to go to the craft show? What are all the products you want to have made to take? What are the extra things you need to buy? You can manage all of this as one project in software. And if you're in the Starship community and you want to hear specifics about how people use this, ask in the community. So now you've looked at the projects that you have, what are recurring, what you're waiting for other people on, how it's working for you or not working for you. And you're thinking, okay, I need something, but what tool do I use? Or maybe you're using something and it's not working that great for you. So let's talk about what tool will you use to manage your ongoing tasks. Now, before we go any further, I want to stress one point I really want you to understand this. No tool will work unless you use it. I know, you're like, yeah, that's obvious. Of course, no tool is going to work unless I use it. Sometimes we get all wrapped up in finding the perfect tool, or the one that some other successful business owner uses, or the absolute planner that is the system that will solve our whole life. I get wrapped up in this too, trust me, but none of that matters. What matters is what you'll use. What matters is what you create a habit around. What matters is that it works for you, however you work. So the tool that works best for you is the one that you regularly use, the one you put information in, and the one you actually look at every day. There are so many options for to-do list apps. I'm not even going to get into all of them. What you need to know is that a checklist app like Todoist is different from a note-keeping app that has checklists but also collects a lot of different kinds of notes, which would be like Evernote or Google Keep, which is different from a task management software that specifically keeps track of projects. So I've used Evernote in the past when I started with my first VA, and I currently use Google Keep to keep track of notes on the fly that I make when I'm out and about, to keep track of checklists, to keep track of links to articles. I use it mostly for my personal life. So I will sometimes do a to-do list checklist in there. If I need to like reset my day and I'm out, I'll be like, okay, what do I need to do today? I start a checklist that will include business stuff, but I don't do a lot of business planning in it. I really like Google Keep because I can save documents, links, checklists, everything in one place. It's always together. And it was really great when I was starting. My VA and I created a folder in Evernote for standard operating procedures. We called it the flight manual, and it included everything that she might ever need and everything I really ever did. So from checklists to launch plans to how to answer specific questions to collecting up testimonials from people. Basically, it was the way to keep track of kind of all of our standards for communication. Now, if you ever get an email from me or I reply to an email, it's actually me replying. When she replied to things, when my VA now replies to things, she replies as herself, but there are things I want to make sure she does when she replies and ways to act in my business that might be different from other people's business. So we would also use this for project mapping, for having ideas and talking out ideas and coming up with what the to-dos would be before we'd move it into a checklist. So that's great for collecting everything up. That might be where you start. But project management software takes it to the next level by letting you create tasks, which have subtasks and deadlines, all kinds of things. So you can give the task deadlines, you can create a checklist under the task, and you can set the task to repeat. You can also attach pictures and documents and all kinds of things to one specific task that shows up every week. It's really helpful when you do something weekly like this podcast or an email. A project management software might be right for you if you have a project that needs to be done in the exact same way, in the exact same time frame, like every week or every month. Like my podcast, your emails, you're updating your shop online. If you have a project that's waiting for other people, like my example of a knitwear designer, you're sending it back and forth to the tech editor, or if you work with anybody else, a collaboration partner, or you are doing a joint venture with somebody, like you're creating a kit together. This is also really great if you have a project that needs to be paced out. So you need to do step 1 by this date, and step 2 by this date, and step 3 by this date, so you can get it done by a big deadline. Now, you knitwear designers out there, or you tech editors, completely understand that you have many deadlines within your project if you're going to launch it by a specific date. So much of our business is this way. You need to gather stuff, then you need to work on the stuff, and then you need to launch the stuff. You might have launch ideas when you're still just in the gather phase, and a project management software lets you keep track of all that and write all that down and create those to-do lists and then forget about them until you get to that part in the process. Using a system in this way is really great because it keeps you on schedule. You are going to hit your deadlines if you have all parts of a project hitting its deadlines. It also takes it off your mind, so you're not trying to remember all the steps before you actually get to them. It also prepares you to scale up, to hire people, to do more, to bring more people into your business, whether they're people you're hiring or people you're collaborating with. It also helps you visually see what you need to do, which makes you feel accomplished and proud and excited about all you're getting done. I work with so many makers who tell me they're getting nothing done, and when we start looking at what they're doing every day in their business, it's tons. They just don't have any way of tracking it or seeing it, so they don't remember what they're doing in a day. So I love having project management software because it shows me what we've checked off, and I really get into checking things off. Where should you start? So I recommend that you start with what I talked about earlier, listing your projects and asking yourself those questions earlier in the podcast episode. And then make checklists first. Don't worry about software. Don't get a new app. Use whatever you're using. Make checklists for all of the things that you do regularly and that you want to streamline. So I really like Google Keep or Evernote, but you can use whatever you're using if it keeps all of your business checklists in the same place. So once you start to see checklists that are going to recur or repeat, or you want to assign just a part of the checklist to someone else, you can put those checklists into tasks and projects inside your project management software. But you're going to start with checklists and then kind of see when you're ready to put them into projects together or assign them to someone else before you move to project management software. Now, the software I use is Asana, and it's free, so it's not about investing money in your business. It's about investing time in creating a system and a flow and an ease inside your business. Now let's talk about how I do it. I have filled this episode with tips for you to figure out what you should use, what will work for you, and steps you can follow. But I know that you will still ask me, okay, but what do you do, Tara? So I'm going to share my process with you in hopes that it will inspire you to get going and know that you don't have to be perfect. Please keep in mind, I started my business in 2006. Some of y'all weren't even out of high school in 2006. Some of y'all weren't even online in 2006. My systems have become more complex as my business has grown and things have changed. So just start. You don't have to be perfect. I've been using Asana for years. It's totally free and it has all of the bells and whistles I need. It does everything I need it to do. The initial setup took a little bit of time and I had to train myself to use it and I had to train the people I work with to use it. But I've been building tasks in it one at a time over the course of years, and now it is a complete lifesaver for my business. People can move in and out of my business or in and out of tasks, and I know nothing will get missed. So first, let's talk about my weekly projects, like this podcast or my weekly emails or my weekly blog posts. A lot of you ask me how I can be so consistent, and it's because I have a checklist for everything. And everything is assigned to somebody and everybody has a due date each week. So I usually record these podcast episodes on Tuesday or Wednesday, then they're edited and then they're uploaded by the next Wednesday with a blog post and everything. This week I'm actually doing it on Friday, so everybody's timeline is going to be a bit compressed for you to hear this on Wednesday. But when I'm first adding tasks that are brand new to me, weekly things I want to do for the first time ever, I think through the task and I add every single tiny step to the task, like a checklist. It's called subtasks in Asana. Then I run through doing the task myself, start to finish, just using the checklist. Then I can see anything that I forgot and I add anything I forgot to it and I do it again. Then I go up, I assign a day of the week that will want to do this each week, and then I set it to repeat on that day of the week every week. You can absolutely in Asana set a task with subtasks, and some of the subtasks are this person and some are this person, but I found that makes the whole deadline thing kind of confusing unless you set up a system of like, when you're done with your part, you reassign it to me. And when I'm done with my part, I reassign it to you. Just the reminders and the deadlines kind of can be clunky if you put a bunch of different people inside one task. So instead what I do is I make a new task for each person. So I write and record this episode. That's a Tara task. Jay edits it. That's a Jay task. Holly takes the pieces from everywhere, the recording, the video, the image I've created, the transcript I've created, the actual edited audio file, and puts it all in a blog post. So that's her one task with a big long checklist of subtasks. Even though podcast is could be considered one task, it's easier if I break it up, but then I make my tasks, because they have to happen first, repeat every Tuesday. Jay is about editing, repeat every Wednesday and Thursday, and then Holly can do her task on Monday, and it's all ready by Wednesday, and even if we have a time crunch, we still have some extra days in there. So that is how I do a weekly task, and if you don't have anybody in your business, you can still do this for you. I absolutely have tasks that are just for me in there, so that I remember. What I want to reiterate to you is if you have a checklist, you can hire someone to do the things that you don't have to do. Obviously, writing and recording the podcast is a thing only I can do. That is all me. Talking to you in our free Facebook group and in the Starship community and doing weekly check-ins in the Starship community is something only I do. But there are other bits of admin stuff, like all the stuff I listed that goes into the blog post. It doesn't have to have my special sauce touch on it to do it. And so I can hire that out. So even if you're not to the point of hiring it out, if you put all of your boring admin stuff in a checklist, it is much easier for you to turn it over to someone else and for you to train someone else, because it even tells you what software is involved. So I know when I hire somebody, they need to know WordPress and ConvertKit and how to get into Libsyn, or I need to train them to do that. So it's almost like it makes a checklist for our training as well. Now, I have to tell you, it was much, much, much harder for me to hire my first VA when I had no checklists. We really worked together to set all that up, and I paid somebody to work with me to set all that up, basically. Whereas if you start setting this up now before you're ready to hire anybody, you're going to be ready to scale when you need to. When I have a one-time project, like I just recently started a new Facebook group, you can come join us at facebook.com/groups/TaraSwiger. The link will be in the show notes. I put those one-time things in Asana too. So this was something I did every step of, and yet I made a checklist for myself because I was listening to podcast episodes and getting ideas and talking to other people. So I just kept my to-do list kind of going in there to make sure that I actually implemented the stuff that I was learning. So if you hear about something in a podcast and you want to do it, but not quite yet, open up Asana, create a task, put in the steps that you're learning, and assign it to yourself later. So what I typically do with one-time projects is I get an idea, I have something, I talk it out with Holly or Jolie inside Asana. There's a discussion thing, and then I start to put the task list together. Then I keep adding ideas as I have them, as I hear new things, as people give me feedback. And then if I'm going to assign it to people, I assign it to people, and I pace out the due dates so that the end goal due date is met. Now, this Facebook group is actually a great example because I did all the steps myself, and yet I still created tasks to mark off because I didn't want to forget some of the important pieces, like creating a banner for the group or creating images to include or the membership questions that you have to answer before you can come in. So I wanted to keep all those ideas in one place to make sure that I did them. So that's how I use digital tools to help plan my business, and specifically how I use project management software to keep track of everything I keep track on and make sure I follow through with my plans. That's what this is all about. I hope you didn't get lost in the weeds and that you remember the important thing is that you pick a tool you're going to use and that it works for you. I'd love to know what apps and tools you use already or what you're looking for or some kind of solution you need. You can come tell us in the group. Just come over to facebook.com/groups/TaraSwiger, it's my name, to join makers who are growing in confidence and in following through and getting stuff done. So the group is limited to those who have a creative business, so make sure you answer those questions that I ask you or else I can't let you in. So if you've applied to come in and I didn't approve you, apply again. You probably just missed those questions. You need to fill them out. I can't wait to talk to you over there in the group. Now, remember to tune in next week where I'm going to be talking about how to pick your next big project. What is your next big goal, your next big project? You have lots of ideas. 2020 is coming. How do you choose between them? We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to do an episode about creating your best 2020 I'm going to say ever, but it'll be your first 2020 ever, so it better be your best one. Thank you so much for listening and have an enthusiastic day.